Li Wei sits before the window, the disk burning like a slow moon against cold metal. He breathes the same cabin air he'd lived in for 3 orbits, steady and thin. He had come for equations and patient observation, not for alarms and the taste of emergency. Warnings arrive not as screaming, but as pulses, the ship murmuring of trouble in orange light. Xing's voice catalogs failing systems like a sober weather report for a storm nobody can stop. He fingers the photograph of his 8-year-old daughter, a small anchor taped to his helmet's interior. A cold fist clenches at his ribs as he imagines the slow, corrupting touch of radiation on steel and bone. On Earth, Chen Mei leans toward her monitors, reading telemetry as one reads a pulse, slow and exacting. Their voices cross light minutes, her calm questions, his measured reports of spiking radiation and rising hull strain. Chen Mei offers a truth without flourish. The margin is thin, and rescue is not to be counted on. The AI names the case plainly. 3 hours, 10 minutes, a slow breach, and a near-zero survival probability. He hears near zero and feels a single tremor, then steadies himself to the task of getting into his suit. He moves to the suit with a patch softened by years. The exit sequence feels unfamiliar and urgent at once. The ship creaks around him. The disk's light stretches his shadow into the long shape of a man leaving home. He avoids the word, and yet the call from Earth makes the meaning hang heavy in the air. When Chen Mei asks, he admits what he would choose, a quick aim rather than a slow, certain fade. Her voice cracks, soft and unbearable, refusing to let him carry that choice alone. Xing offers options like a ledger, jettison data core, decouple probe, with probabilities laid bare. He straps into the suit with practiced motions, the photograph brushing his fingers and leaving its tiny mark. He works in short, steady strokes, the same careful hands that once mended a lab valve back in Beijing. Xing calls checks, Chen Mei gives quiet guidance, and his hands follow with steady competence. The meter climbs and the shield matrix reports failure, numbers that march toward a line they cannot cross. He tightens a clamp and thinks of her laugh, a small, bright torque that steadies his hands. He speaks aloud to anchor himself. He wants to bring back a picture, a trace of the stars for her hands. Chen Mei promises she will keep his watch and tell his stories, small comforts for a child left on Earth. Xing tallies progress, 18% better, but the primary thruster still bleeds. The clock gives them 2 hours. He straps the thruster pack from the locker, a compact unit with a sun-brown nozzle as if bitten by flame. Chen Mei proposes patience and a jettison. He knows patience risks a slow stop and refuses that kind of end. He rests his palm on the red release tab as if feeling the decision under his skin. His heartbeat answers. His heart thuds like a drum inside the suit. He knows the needle's next move and rejects the slow decay it promises. Chen Mei asks him to say the risks aloud. No quiet assumptions, so both can own the choice they make. He asks for a promise for his daughter. She promises fiercely, the steady human response to an unbearable ask. Xing records the decision with machine calm and enumerates the last calibrations. Thrusters, seals, vector locked. The thruster pack clicks into place and the act feels strangely like setting a small weight down elsewhere. The airlock smells like pennies and metal. Chen Mei's face hangs small but human on the screen beside him. He notices lines at her eyes he'd missed. Small maps of long nights and care folded into her face. She tells him he needn't go alone. He answers that with her voice and Xing he has never been without company. The outer door sighs open and space waits, pinprick stars and the disk like a slow, angry smear. Helmet sealed, thruster latched, Xing's voice layers from suit speaker and ship console in the same steady tone. The hatch closes and the ship drifts, leaving him alone with a thin glare and a vast, patient darkness. He feels the black hole's gentle, inexorable pull. His aim is to thread its seam of light, not to be swallowed. They count together, a small ritual of numbers that stitches earth and void into one fragile instant. A whisper of thrusters, a tiny flare of light, and he pushes sideways and down with surgical intent. He threads the seam like a needle in motion, each micro-correction a promise to himself and to those who wait. He expects a sharp end, but time thins and familiar sounds stretch into long, slow ribbons of clicks and clangs. Instead of agony, there's a sudden odd ease, like someone turning down a harsh lamp in a crowded room. Images unspool without effort. A boiling kettle, his daughter's grin, the small domestic textures of the life he loves. He smells rain and cedar, impossible sense in vacuum but true inside him, small proofs that memory survives. Xing's voice shifts, warmer, oddly human, relaying tiny packets of data that feel less like science and more like fragments of life. The burn is a grazing entry, calculated and brief, 4 minutes to the event horizon if the vector holds. He experiences a soft unhitching, time thinning like old paper and the world folding into a new texture. For an instant, he is a child beneath fireworks again, ordinary wonder folded into the cosmic seam. He sees a hall crowded with small things, the noise of lives and memories arranged like furniture in light. He asks Chen Mei to tell his daughter he loves her and to tell her to put her hand in the rain. Xing's tone warms as it reports that small packets from the core continue to transmit, data with unanticipated shape. He passes through bands of light perfumed by impossible cedar and iron. Fear gives way to a measured calm. Telemetry phrase and Chen Mei pleads into the thinning line, her voice a tether stretched thin across light minutes. His reply, distant and soft, says he sees a hall noisy with small things and tells them he loves his daughter. Xing reports the core sending odd burst packets. Chen Mei records them, sensing these are pieces of life, not only data. He does not fall so much as pass, threading through something like a cosmic needle until the world brightens and then breathes blank. On Earth, the monitors pause and then glow with a new, untidy signal, data that will not be neatly filed away. Packets arrive as bursts of image and voice, laughter, and tiny scenes that look more like memory than raw measurement. Near the black border, he drifts through a corridor of light where familiar faces and unknown ones wait like friends in hallways. He sits upon something like stone and wipes his hands. Suit readouts quiet and slip into unreadable shapes. He unwraps the photograph and feels it warm in his palm, a small undeniable proof of continuity and care. Chen Mei speaks with small ferocity into the thinning line, assuring he'll be remembered and his transmissions sent. His words fall like pebbles into a large, quiet pond, ripples of meaning reaching those who will carry them home. He asks that they tell his daughter the stars are not lonely, that he saw the kitchen and rain and is not afraid. Xing relays final packets with machine calm, then grows quiet, the avatar's edges softening as if a secret were spent. Core integrity slides down toward single digits even as small transmissions continue, as if time itself were patient. She rests a hand on the console, breath shallow and different, promising quietly to keep listening and to keep telling. She begins to make a list of the small things to pass on, times, sound bites, a watch, and a story or two. She saves one packet for a rainy afternoon, a deliberate promise against silence for the child who will ask. He feels no cold or pain, only a small, fierce peace, as ordinary and real as strong tea or a daughter's paint-splattered hands. He understands the black center not as a void, but as a place full of memory, care folded in where matter once was. He stands and walks deeper into the fold of light carried onward, not swallowed, still himself in the smallest of ways. Xing preserves a soft trace of humming and numbers, a quiet archive meant to be read by those who care. Chen Mei files the transmissions under Li Wei's name and pens a note to his daughter with what truth she can offer. She promises a watch and a box of stories, small, tangible things to keep memory in the living world. The last thing he feels is the weight of an ordinary life settling over him like a familiar coat, comforting and whole. As transmissions thin, Chen Mei stays at the console, clutching the small recorded breaths and packets they've received. Her breath changes, steadier now, as she turns her energy to the human job of keeping promises and telling stories. She files every packet with clinical care and human tenderness, building a scaffold of truth for his daughter. She earmarks one packet for a rainy afternoon and imagines the child's small hand pressing play, hearing her father's voice. Her note will say this plainly. He chose. He found more than a simple end at the black border, something holding memory. He continues deeper and is carried rather than consumed. The ordinary life he loved still fits him perfectly here. The piece is small and fierce, made of ordinary pleasures and duties that remain with him as he moves onward. Xing keeps a soft final file, humming and numbers braided together like a lullaby for those who will listen later. She files the last transmissions under Li Wei's name and tucks a note to his daughter into the packet for safekeeping. She promises to keep telling his stories, to hand the child a watch and the recordings like a small inheritance. The quiet beyond their reach is not empty. It holds traces and echoes, the small human things he loved. He turns and walks deeper into the light, a final forward step into something that holds rather than erases. An ordinary life settles over him, the taste of tea, the mess of paint, the steady weight of a watch, meaning made small and whole. The ending reframes itself, not erasure but rearrangement, memory and care preserved within the quiet's hold. Small human things are kept and ferried differently now. The photograph, the watch, a recorded breath archived for an uncertain listener. She remains, listening into the quiet and filing echoes, small duties that stitch absence to the living world. She writes a simple truth for his daughter. He chose, and he was held by something strangely tender beyond the edge. A packet is set aside for a rainy afternoon, the moment when a child's small need might welcome a familiar voice. The archive becomes a promise, not resurrection but preservation. The truth of his choices kept for those who remain. Xing's humming trace stays on servers as ambient remembrance, a small, machine-kept memorial to what was lived. She composes a small box of stories, watch, printed packets, and handwritten notes, something physical to hold and remember by. She turns promise into plan, deliver the box and recordings to his daughter at the right moment, tender and deliberate. No body is brought back, but his story is rescued, recorded, catalogued, and entrusted to those who will remember. The quiet keeps things, memories, small domestic truths, recorded breaths preserved for those left to hold them dear. A watch waits in its box like a small token of time, meant to keep her anchored to the remembered hours of his life. The tale insists on small things, the kettle, the laugh, the paint mess, because these are the pieces of a life worth saving. Memory becomes a shelter as real as any hull, holding leeway in ways equations never mapped or expected. Her quiet labor, cataloging, annotating, curating, turns data into an inheritance that a child can hold and know. Transmissions rest in secure archives for analysts and, crucially, in a small box meant for a child's hand someday. He carries ordinary weights, tea, watch, daughter's laughter, into whatever comes next and finds they still fit him there. The ending arrives different than fear promised, not erasure but archive, and a living promise passed from hand to hand. He's remembered and held, not merely as data, but as a person whose facts were turned into stories and comfort. Chen Mei keeps listening, long and quietly, to hums, packets, and the human echoes that mean the most in the silence. In time, her promise becomes kept, files dispatched, a box sealed, a note tucked into an archive of human care. He walks deeper into the light and is carried, this passage small and fierce and full of the peace he asked for.